I just had a great conversation with Giulio from Bliss, Henry from Furthr, and Linda from K2. And we talked about everything to do with this Earth Day special around Our Power, Our Planet. Giulio talked a lot about his own program and what they've done through data transition and what changes they're making. Henry talked to us a lot around what Furthr can do to help support organizations and communicate from the very top level all the way down to those people that are actually making the difference using those tools available to them. And then Linda also added around what we're doing at K2 to make that difference and using that data to drive genuine change. So tune in, have a watch and enjoy. Okay, so I'm joined today by Linda, who is our Global Head of Compliance and ESG. Henry Bishop, I was going to start pointing, but it really depends on where you're on the screen. So Henry Bishop, who is the CEO of Furthr, our sustainability partner, 2 years now with us. And then Giulio from Bliss, one of our household goods and destination service partners. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
And we're talking about, or we're joined for our Earth Day special. And this year's theme is described as Our Power, Our Planet. Feels like a really strong statement, and which is pretty cool. So before we dive into some of the questions that we sort of wanted to open up and discuss, actually one from me is understanding that what that theme means to each one of you, and I actually really wanted to start with you, Linda, to sort of lay out the grounding for what it means to us at K2, and then I'll bring in Henry and Giulio on sort of their experience of it as well.
Of course.
So, yeah, over to you, Linda.
Well, for us at K2, I think I know it's Our Power, Our Planet, and around the world we've gone out to all our sustainability champs to get their input into what they're going to do on the day. And one of the things that they're going to do, we're going to have a power down for an hour and turn off any non-vital. I know everyone looks a bit panicked when I say that, but we are going to turn down.
I wasn't panicked. That was utter elation.
It's really cool. Anything non-vital is going to be turned off for an hour. So that's how we're going to kind of acknowledge it within the theme. But for us, it's actually about collaboration. To me, the fact that we've got, a partner on the call, we've got our other partner on the call who, runs our sustainability program with us. To me, they're the things that's vital to an Earth Day. It's about, looking at how we can't do anything without our partners, without our network. And so to me, the collaboration that goes behind it is how we mark Earth Day. The only thing that's missing is having a client, and then we would have had our whole supply chain on it. So, it's awesome that we're here and we can talk about what it means to other people. But for us, the majority of it is towards the collaboration.
And Henry, when I think about not specifically your role, but the role of Furthr when you're working with people like us with K2, but and your sort of wider client base, how do you guys take an event like Earth Day and use it to sort of influence those environmental impacts, how the businesses can make a real difference?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question. I think firstly, Earth Day, Earth Month is a time when people see a lot of content generally about planet, about sustainability. So it's an apt window to run different types of engagement with different stakeholder groups. However, I would say the most impact that we have oftentimes happens continuously throughout a year versus in one specific window. Specific to Earth Day, though, it's a time we find to engage colleagues and supply chain partners, because it's a very great time to bring those two core stakeholder groups into a room all together and to talk about progress, to talk about what the future looks like within an organisation and indeed outside of it.
It's a good time for education as well, because the guys at Furthr are going to talk to people again to mark Earth Day, in the same as we did last year. But great time for communication, because it's so kind of like at the forefront of everyone's mind. It's a great time to talk about things.
I was going to say, it's a great reason just to put it back in the forefront of people's minds, and again create that conversation around it, and emphasize any points that you've, for the other 11 months of the year, maybe the further you move away from Earth Month and Earth Day, it sort of starts to dwindle a little bit. So your efforts have to increase. It's a great vehicle to sort of put that front of mind again. And I'm guessing, Giulio, if I come over to you, it's almost like that was a niche link when I said vehicle. But when I'm thinking of what it is that you guys do around things like, the transportation, materials, packaging, accommodation, etc., what are you guys doing on a day-to-day basis so not just around Earth Day, but when you're thinking around what the sort of the preface is behind Earth Day this year, what are you guys doing with that regard?
Well, James, the most concrete changes that are in how we use resources, basically, and how we organize the daily operations. Consider that in our 2026 sustainability plan, we set targets to reduce energy, water, paper, and CO2 emissions. And we track these results over time. For example, one practical example is the hybrid working, for sure. It helps reducing commuting and also lowers overall resources consumption for the company. In these days, it is a very hot topic for the government as well, considering what we are living on a global scale. We are also paying more attention to procurement, and when possible, we compare options and choose the more sustainable one. So it's not the big action, but many small improvements done consistently.
And so it's a combination of practical and theoretical change, I guess.
Correct.
Sort of drive those. You mentioned earlier about, the sort of the obvious one is a reduction in pure and simple energy usage, which, like Linda was saying about the what did you call it, Linda?
Power down hour.
Power down.
I don't think that's the official title. It's just what I'm calling it.
Yeah, power hour down an hour. Do you, when you're looking at, so let's have a look at things in a little bit more detail around that reduction of energy. How you talked about reduction of energy usage, reduction of water, hybrid working. What about on the sort of day-to-day of things like your optimizing transportation routes, the fleet that you have, so on and so forth? Some of those things that require quite a lot of investment from a business perspective on both a logistical and practical sense. And I imagine for you, Henry, that's one of those ones that you could easily go into an organization and go, this is what you need. You need an EV fleet. You need to drive less people coming. And then there's the real, cool, but we've got a business to run.
Yeah.
Giulio, when you're thinking about those practical elements, are there any details that you can give some insight into with regard to transportation, around sort of just changing a wholesale methodology of working that makes an impact?
Well, definitely. What I would say, James, is that we started from, considering our household goods part of the business, we started from the packing material, for example. We in the past, we used, for example, just to give you the idea, we used printed and colored boxes in white, and so to reduce the environmental impact, we started to use neutral boxes so that we can use less paint and reduce the impact of the CO2 on the environment. we switched from plastic label to paper label. That is the biggest challenges that we are facing as a moving company, because the Packers are not very big fans of paper label, but we're getting there slowly. And we started with the awareness. We invested in training on sustainability, on safety and inclusion. For the transportation, we are slowly getting there. As you know, the European transportation system is not. It's slowly improving and transitioning to the hybrid and electric. For the transportation, diesel is still running the scene, but we are making changes. We are trying to transitioning into the electric and the hybrid transportation for all our goods.
Is the kind of like is the support system for those in place yet? If it's not so great in the UK. It's getting better for like charging points, but I mean, all of that is a consideration. If the support system's not there, it's very difficult for you to run an electric fleet if you can't charge it.
This is exactly the point, Linda. Thank you for pointing this out, but it's exactly the biggest problem that we are facing in Italy at the moment is the lack of infrastructure on a national level. On the highway system, you can find charging spots, but they're mainly for vehicles and not for industrial vehicles, and the batteries do not cover big distances. So electrical and hybrid vehicles are mainly focused for the parcel distribution on a local level. If you do any kind of logistic distribution in big cities like Rome, Milan, then it's a thing. But for big moves, intra-European or within the national territory, it's much more complicated, I would say.
I think it's so interesting, Giulio. Lovely to hear all of that, sort of context. I think it interests me so much the feasibility of reduction initiatives, right? The general societal feasibility of a lot of these activities that have to happen, but a lot of them can't happen because, firstly, it might not make any commercial sense at a certain point in time, and on top of that, sometimes it just costs too much in the here and now. But my core belief is that having the conversation itself is as powerful as running the activity in many cases. Because of course, at the moment, perhaps in Italy, there are, feasibility issues with these pieces, but that modeling over the next 5-10 years, past 2030 for near-term net zero, past through to 2040, that these things are going to start to change because ambitious businesses want it to happen. And that's one of the sort of elements of this whole space that excites me so much. Is a lot of it is businesses requiring governmental systems to over time transition.
So having those conversations now is what, obviously that repetitive nature, getting it airtime is what sort of makes that transitional sort of step change.
People want to make people want to do the right thing and make the right decisions. And Henry and I, as part of our transition plan, we talk about this all the time. How can we reduce our impact? And we can only do it through our supply chain. And it's like through ambitious people like Giulio who wants to make that difference and wants to make that investment. But it's a massive investment. But the thing is even if they, it's not feasible for them to make it at the moment because there's, the infrastructure is just not there yet.
And how do we? So that's one element. Obviously, infrastructure not being there, but coming, and those conversations create that change. I wanted to go back to something Giulio mentioned on a basic level, but it got me thinking. Giulio, you said about Packers, they don't like the paper labels over the plastic labels, right? And that occurred to me that we have in businesses across the globe, we have companies like Furthr who talk to businesses, aka talking to people like Linda or yourself, Julia, at a top level. But actually, it's how we utilize communication, how we utilize that understanding that proliferates through the organization. So the people that are really there, that are embracing, that are experiencing that change, you know. So Giulio could sit there and go, "Yep, we're moving from plastic labels to paper labels," and his packing team could go, "No," and it's like, and it's sort of, and I'm not saying they did that, by the way, but like, how, Henry, for your organisation, maybe this is one for you. Like, how do you see that there's a series of layers that have to go, that have to be gotten through for everyone across an organisation to really understand that change sits with everybody in the business?
100%. I think you're alluding to a really good part of a solid transition plan, which relates to consulting those affected business owners or reduction initiative owners before the transition plan's actually set in stone. So this bottom-up stakeholder consultation is how the best transition plans run, because you obviously want to make sure that the people you're going to ask, not order, you're going to ask to change a specific business process, they've been involved from the outset and they've been able to give their own assessment on the feasibility of the change, if that makes sense. And oftentimes you'll layer that in with CapEx, OpEx investment as well, to see over time how much it's going to cost. Ideally, you find a net saving, which is great for the business, but you also don't want to annoy your team. So you want to make sure you've assessed for feasibility and also assess for savings else cost. I would say as well, though, it's probably so ironic for me to say this as a sustainability partner. Sometimes we're encouraging our wonderful clients to go a bit slower, because net zero is net zero by 2050, right? We've got some time, and a lot of the times we're working with such ambitious teams, and we're saying perhaps put the brakes on for a few months to ensure that those right stakeholders have been consulted before a change takes place. Sorry.
So you've got a strong foundation to build upon, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly. Just so that you can scale an activity with the business owner understanding it, being involved. Now, please don't quote me on that. I shouldn't say that.
Well, I mean, you've said it on a podcast, so you quote yourself. But it makes sense. It does make sense, because, if I think about it, do it once, do it well, right? So you could rush something through, but if you're having to repeat it, or something's fundamentally broken in the process or misunderstood, and therefore you're doing it again, you're starting again, that 2050 is going to creep up pretty quickly. Whereas if you just go, look, let's just everyone calm down, we've got time, let's do this once, do it well. And so that approach makes sense to me. And I guess then that leads me on to one of my next questions, around a lot of, I know a lot of what Linda and the team do is there's a lot of data-driven insight. So we spend, and as with you, Henry, and Giulio as well, of course, we spend a lot of time examining the data and using the data to firstly understand, is change going in the right direction? Is it going at the right pace? Do we need to change anything? And so data-driven expertise, I imagine in your world is, particularly Henry, is vital. And so my question is, when we think about things like carbon measurements, and we think about how organizations can use those measurements and that data and that analysis of that data, how is that helping them make better decisions as an organization?
Yeah, great question. So I think firstly, we all know that businesses love data generally, right? Outside of sustainability.
Linda's like,
Linda loves data especially. But data informs good decision making. And that same principle is applied to life cycle analysis, carbon accounting, where our main metric is CO2 equivalent at the moment. There are plenty of other metrics you can use and can quantify, but the usual metric is CO2 equivalent. So we as businesses really enjoy crunching numbers, getting insights from data, specifically with carbon management, with net zero, with carbon accounting. Good quality measurement of CO2 equivalent helps us to truly identify where hotspots of emissions sit across a value chain, so across an entire operation and supply chain downstream activity. And it gives us a starting point to tie our activities to real world emissions impact. Without that, you're kind of stuck in the loop of saying we're gonna change all of our vehicles to EV, and you can't really say much else because you don't really know where your impact is, if I'm honest. So we've never done a measurement with any of our clients, including with K2, where there hasn't been some surprising pieces that have come out to say, wow, okay, we've got some hotspots sitting in this little cohort, this segment of our supply chain that we didn't really think about before. So it helps to surface, not the problem, but surface the reality when done well, and therefore enables you to create a real solution for it.
And do you see that as something that is either within a certain area of a supply chain? Is it geographical locations? Is it a bit of a mix of everything?
I think it totally depends on the value chain that we're measuring at the time. So the type of industry, the type of business, the type of business model, and indeed the location. So it's kind of a mixture of a few. Specifically, of course, within the mobility relocation world, there are some serious hard to abate sectors in the supply chain, including some sources that Giulio, of course, manages. These are really traditionally well-known, hard to reduce areas. So within the relocation world specifically, it absolutely does stick out within the supply chain where the most emissive cohorts are. But yes, absolutely, there is an impact on where exactly the activity is taking place too, just because of the society and their own journey to net zero. Does that make sense?
And Giulio, can I bring you back in and ask you where you see some of those?
We could, speak a lot about this specific topic. What I would say is that for us, one of the change that could significantly reduce the relocation industry footprint would be for sure the data, because in our industry, a large part of the impact is indirect. So with a clear and comparable data, it's difficult to act effectively. So improving transparency and standardization for us would really, but I firmly believe that it would really help to drive better decision on for our industry. So
I totally agree with that Giulio. I think our world on the carbon data side is on a very interesting trajectory at the moment to drive data quality generally within carbon accounting systems. But we're not quite there yet, to be honest, as a whole industry. I think we'll be sort of 3 or 4 years until we can get sort of primary grade, audit grade, scientific carbon factors on all parts of the economic life cycle. A lot of the times our clients, and the world needs to model some data because you don't have what we call activity data available. But even again, having this conversation, running a measurement each year, you just get better and better. You get better data sources, and luckily, technology is helping us all quite a lot to feed all of it up through a value chain. So I hope help is coming over time.
Help is on the way.
Yeah.
And so thinking about those data pieces, and once you're able to, even today, as you say, help is on its way. But even today, when we're looking at that data, and you're able to identify, within K2, for example, when you're able to identify some of the areas where we need to reduce or make changes.
Yeah.
What levers does your organisation, does Furthr recommend to, or for both of you, and maybe for you first, Henry, what levers do you recommend? And then maybe Linda, for you to say sort of, and these are some of the ones that we've genuinely see make a difference.
Yeah, sure. So specific to the relocation value chain, you've got some really interesting opportunities, and I'm not saying everyone should do this tomorrow. These need consideration, but
You've got till 2050, right?
yeah,
Don't rush.
Yeah, don't rush.
these are big decisions to make. So you have, of course, optimizing routes of logistics travel, which can move the needle to a certain extent. So just route optimization to reduce emissions from those routes, that can help. You've also got biofuels within shipping, which is a very interesting, perhaps sometimes very expensive area of decarbonisation. But again, we know that has to happen. We know that the global logistics industry, freight industry, is responsible for about 8% of global emissions. It's one of those classic hard to abate sectors where biofuels will help, absolutely. But will it happen immediately? No, it needs Linda, yourself to talk to Giulio. It needs Giulio to talk to your partners. It
I
continues.
thought you were going to say it needs Linda to solve the 8%.
I can do that.
Tag, you're it.
Absolutely. But you've got some more. You've got some other interesting decarbonisation activities, even closer to home. So we know that oftentimes when colleagues are relocated, sometimes their own household goods are stored in locations in their old location. So that's actually quite an easy thing to decarbonise in terms of ensuring that the energy for that storage is itself run off of green energy, electrified, those types of things. And the final one I will mention, which is emerging, and I say this is proceed with caution because there is quite a lot of scientific debate at the moment, and that's sustainable aviation fuel. Because we know as a standalone source, probably flights are the most, that have the highest emissions intensity across the relocation life cycle. They might not have the most weight or the most volume, but it is the highest emissions intensity. At the moment, SAF, very, very conscious use of sustainable aviation fuel, direct procurement of that fuel for the flight, is a decarbonisation method that will come through as accepted under the big framework setters like the SBTI and the others. However, proceed with caution because at the moment I think it's less than 1% of the global aviation sector relies on SAF.
Is that right?
And there are questions around whether it is scalable in and of itself because the amount of land use that we would need to create the SAF in the first place causes upstream impacts.
Creates its own problem.
Just some opportunities there. I mean, beyond the sort of standard expected EV, type things, just to sort of hopefully show that there are innovative methods coming through day by day at this point. They just need some caution and they need some time to scale a lot of the time. I would love to be in a world saying that, hydrogen planes are how we relocate all of our colleagues, but I mean, that's above my pay grade probably for now.
We're not quite there yet.
Yeah. And Linda, then the question to you around sort of what we've seen within K2, the sort of some of those successful levers to reduce. Is it just a case of education, nudge, and repeat?
Yeah, well, and the other thing is it's constantly evolving. We work really closely with Henry and the guys at Furthr, and some of those things that he's mentioned there, they're on our to-do list. They're all the things that we're working on. We're looking at the route optimization side of things, so that we can inform our clients ahead of moves. These, you could go this route or you can go this route, and that's the impact of those. And so when they make their decisions on how much impact they're prepared to make, that's the route that they will take. So there's things that we're looking at. Our Bath University, Hanya, she's talked to the guys at Furthr as well, because she's been working on a project around SAF as well, and she's so that's another area. They're all things that we've been looking into, but if we're talking about areas that we are improving on, I would also say that it's the measurement every year. It's improving the quality of the data that we can report on, so that our reporting gets better, because that's what our clients want. But the other thing is, poor Henry, because I keep pulling him into everything, is when people come up with a new project, that there'll be clients who go, well, we're not going to move people, we're going to give people a lump sum instead, and then the guys went off and I asked them to do a study into what's the impact. So if you're going to, at your destination, get rid of everything you own, then go to a new destination and buy everything new because you've been given a lump sum, what's the impact of that? So and I think, and I'm sure Henry would say the same, and I'm sure Giulio would say the same too. The thing with sustainability is that you quite often you might take 10 steps forward and you'll take about 30 back, because everyone thinks they found a way around it, a way of improving it. Really,
like Henry was just saying about SAF, right? Exactly. It's like, oh, there's a solution.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, there is, it's quite often the smaller initiatives that aren't going to have such a big impact, but they'll make that difference. And it's constantly balancing. We've got to remember this. We all want to make the right decisions, but this is our business, so you have to find that balance between being able to do things sustainably, but being able to do business too. Like if we was to say, right, we don't work with anyone that hasn't got electric fleets, we wouldn't be able to do business. It's really, so everything has to be manageable and realistic, because it's very difficult to make a difference without having everyone along, but also understanding the real impacts, because they're the issues.
I think there's I can't agree more with yourself, Linda, and I think there's this beautiful thing. Even me personally, about 7-8 years ago when Furthr was set up, I used to be personally conscious, perhaps a bit anxious about supply chain carbon accounting. Right, it was like the big thing. Everyone's scared of it. A lot of people are still a bit scared of measuring and trying to make movements on their supply chain because it seems like a big black box, but over the years, for me at least, it's turned into the most beautiful thing, because it's the way that businesses connect with other businesses and how the whole economy fits together, this whole continuous value chain of companies feeding down requirements and feeding up net zero activity.
Yeah.
So I think over time what we're going to see is the carbon accounting, emissions measurement, net zero will become a lot more continuous, data flowing one way and the other way. So there might be a requirement from Linda on Giulio to do a specific piece. That's then tracked, fed back up, and Giulio, likewise with yourself, with your suppliers as well, same requirement fed down, and lo and behold, hopefully, the global economy decarbonizes, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, across relocation specifically, yes, because some of these sectors are really hard to abate, like aviation, they are just really difficult. You can spend your time in the supply chain, which will have, on a net basis, a humongous impact, because you're using your commercial influence as a leading organization with a supplier who really wants to work with you to hopefully encourage them on their own journey to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I'm definitely expecting over the years we're going to see a lot more data, and we're doing this already for K2, data on the net zero trajectories of the total supply chain, modeling out exactly when supply chain itself will reach net zero. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. And actually, Henry, I had a question here around how does transparency strengthen trust with clients and stakeholders? But I think you've nailed it with that, which is this. When you can provide data, and you can provide data, B, provide what data gives, which is understanding. It gives a plan. It gives you a roadmap to change, whatever it may be. It might be a roadmap to keep doing what we're doing, but that data is what provides that strength of we're doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to ask that question, because you kind of answered it inadvertently before I even asked it.
I totally agree. I think that it's a lot of the times when we as supply chain measurement technology partners, like we look at transparency, we're trying to find the scientific methods for measuring certain things within the supply chain. So there's this big debate around spend-based versus activity-based emissions, modeled versus more scientific. And even having the conversation or saying to your client that, look, we're modeling on spend base for now, but we are committed to improving that data quality and that
They
transparency.
love that.
Oh my gosh,
They
yeah,
absolutely love it.
I feel like everyone is in the same boat. Even the more mature, much larger, global, multinational companies, they're having the same problems. We work with many of them. They're having the same problems, and everyone is, doesn't seem like there's a crazy expectation that you have to have this by this time. When we see those conversations play out, it's more about, can you join us on the journey and we'll do it together.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
and
Lovely way.
they always have more.
To your point, more people involved, the easier the change becomes.
But when we talk to some of our clients, and Henry or Jenny are on the call, they get super excited and they want much more information than we were going to provide in the presentation. But it's led to a lot of calls and a lot of further discussions. Appropriate word use of terms, because like I said, everyone's in the same boat, and everyone needs help with it to improve it.
So looking at this call to action, our power, our planet. Giulio first, from your perspective, from Bliss's perspective, what's the commitment that Bliss are making to sort of honour that call to action of our power, our planet? Is anything coming up for you guys? Any data driven decisions that you're making?
Well, for us, the commitment is quite simple, to keep making sustainability part of everyday operations, for sure. We are driven by our ISO 14001 certification, EcoVadis certification. So not something separate, but the part of how we work, how we measure impact, and how decisions are made. It's about consistency, doing things a bit better step by step, as we said. I mean, Harry, you said a fantastic thing. The goal is it's 2050, not tomorrow. So we need to make sure that those improvements are measurable and are constantly growing year by year.
And Linda, what about from K2's perspective?
I was just making a note, then you caught me making a note, sorry. K2's perspective is keep sustainability in the conversation. Obviously, it's important to our clients.
That was my note.
Oh. Anyone would think I was keeping it in notes. To keep it in the conversation, it's to keep improving, our clients. I believe, and I think Henry would agree with me, our clients appreciate what we're doing. And at K2, we've kind of got ambitions above the size of our business to deliver things around sustainability. So I think for us, it's to keep on delivering and keep on improving, and being able to share with clients and engage. The biggest thing is the supply chain. We know that the majority of our emissions are in our supply chain. What percentage is it, Henry? Is it 82%?
I think it's 82 or 81.
Yeah, I think
check with Jenny on the updated figures.
Look at me remembering something that's almost and so we need to engage and work with our supply chain. That's on our agenda for this year, so that we can meet our targets in 2050.
And for Furthr, Henry? Yeah, I mean, beholden to say keep delivering the world's best carbon management systems, but I honestly think for us it means keep facilitating genuine climate action across a value chain, across the global economy, and helping that to maintain and build a good business relationship between two other parties. Does that make sense?
It does completely, yeah. I mean, it feels like there's a lot of similarity between all three different parties, but the sort of the common thread is around keeping the conversation going, keeping it front of mind, keep using the time wisely, using the data wisely, and building upon everything that we've done, each individual business has done to date, and to keep sort of fact checking, monitoring back. Are we still going in the right direction? and just to keep pushing, I guess. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to sort of talk about our power, our planet, and really keeping that conversation going. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
If you work in global mobility, this podcast is for you. Every episode of Personally Speaking brings you real stories, insights, and strategies from across the industry, the kind you won't hear anywhere else. So if you want to stay ahead, hit subscribe now and never miss an update.